you love ball like I do, After Dark's a must listen.
It's where I go to get my hoops fixed.
This is Field of 68 After Dark.
What's the word, everybody? Welcome into the Field of 68 After Dark on this Thursday night. I'm your man, Cam Smith, holding things down with my two guys, Randolph Childress and Kenny Frease. As we just make sense of what the hell has been going on with college basketball this week. We got a lot coming your way, especially what's happened over the past few days. You see my guys, Kenny and also Randolph, just shaking their heads like, yeah, Cam, it's been some wild shit happening in college basketball. So we're going to try and unpack some of the latest that we've seen, especially even going in to tonight. I mean, we saw 4 of the top five teams take L's the past couple of days as well. So we'll get into that a little bit. We're going to get into some panic meter situations, especially when it deals with North Carolina and also conferences like the ACC and the Big East. So if you're one of those fans, then you need to listen intently and try and see if you need to do something else with your life instead of watching your teams play, because it has been nasty work. And I'm just calling a spade, Kenny. It is what it is. And you know that's what we do on the Field of 68. We don't hold any punches, and we just give it to the people real raw and uncut. So let's start off with tonight. And speaking of those fan bases, guys, we're going to start in the Big Ten with Big Ten play opening up for number 8 ranked Purdue. And another one of those teams ranked, but definitely in the top 10, that caught an L against Penn State. You see the final score there, lost by 11. But look, this game was basically open gym at one point. I mean, you had Purdue just dominating in every single way. They led by 27 at one point. But then also for this Purdue team, guys, 24 turnovers. Now, I played for Matt Painter my freshman year at Southern Illinois when he was the coach there for that single season. I know they're about to walk through hell with gasoline draws on in the next practice, because there is no way you can play any type of basketball game and have that many turnovers, 24. So, Randolph, when you think about what we've seen from Purdue early on, obviously a situation against Penn State, it felt like they came out early and they were just playing around with their food and really didn't take Penn State serious, especially when you look at just how this game transpired.
I think you got to give Penn State all the credit. I mean, they came out defensively and just took it at them. I mean, to be honest with Purdue, you just throw the tape away with this one. I don't know how much of this game you actually the turnovers were the story. Out of that, I don't know what you get out of it. Figuring out how to be more competitive away from home against quality opponents in conference will always be there. You're going to lose games, so I'm not going to overreact to the loss. I still think Purdue is a good team. I'm a firm believer in Matt Painter, but this was just an ass kicking, and it wasn't as close as the final score. Figuring out how to handle pressure, like that was just disruptive, and some of those turnovers was just I don't understand. It's 24. I don't think that'll happen again. But that's all I'll say to it. I just don't want to overreact to that. I think it was an ass kicking though. You take games like this. It's concerning this early in the year to get one like that, but everyone is going to take one, and that's all it was. I'm gonna chalk it up as well. This happens again, and I'm on record for saying I thought there would be a dip in Purdue's. I think people went a little crazy. Like I said, they were going to fall off. They were going to be absolutely horrendous. But I do think they're going to have some losses like this. They're going to struggle away from Mackey. That's one of the biggest home court advantages you can have in the country. And when this team gets away from that, because you're relying on guys. I know we talk about their backcourt, but Trey Kaufman is up averaging 19 a game. Can he take that away from Mackey Arena, considering he's just a primarily left shoulder dominant guy? But today was just an ass kicking, man. You watch that tape, like you said, practice is going to be hell. You get to get him refocused again, but that was just, you don't take nothing out of that.
Kenny, what do you take away from that game that we saw against Purdue, man? Because you talked about Kaufman Wren, RC, also Braden Smith, Foster Lawyer, those three guys combining for 15 turnovers, right? And these are guys that are supposed to be your ball handlers and can relieve pressure and also create and make plays for themselves and others. But 15 turnovers with those three alone can't happen. You're not going to win ball games that way at all.
Well, I think you said it right off the bat. Baseline to baseline, they were playing defense. They were playing defense hard too. It was a tough press to break. And then Niederhauser down low, he really impressed me. He didn't have a crazy stat line, 6 points, 2 rebounds, nothing crazy. But man, he was really clogging up the paint. He's a big guy. He's a force down low. I always got to give the shout out to the big guys down there. But I mean, it was just from the very beginning of the game. Hicks came out and he was 2 for 2 from 3 early. He only ended up with 11 points, 2 for 5 from 3. But they came out, punched him in the mouth in the beginning of the game, and it was, I mean, they got the crowd behind him. The defense was going. I mean, like you said, 24 turnovers. And then the other big stat of the game is that Penn State made 28 free throws. They went 28 for 32 from 3 or from the free throw line. And Purdue only makes 19. It's a Big Ten game. You're thinking it's going to be physical. I would expect there to be more free throws in that game, getting to the basket. It was just it was tough for Purdue all night.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of two ways.
Ace Baldwin was the better point guard tonight, and I don't think Purdue's going to win a lot of games if Braden Smith is outplayed at that position. Like, he's the preseason player of the year, and tonight he wasn't the best point guard on the floor. Ace Baldwin was better tonight, and he had more of an impact to the game. So, like I said, I just want to. It's again. I'm curious to see what Purdue is going to look like consistently away, but I don't want to overreact and think that they're going to be a ton of performances like this. They'll right the ship, but obviously they can't have that many turnovers. 24 turnovers, man. You just the whole trip back there watching that, they're going to hear it. They know they got to be better, and they will. They just got to figure out the league is going to be what it is. And I think the Big Ten. I think no one is surprised by what's happening in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten title will be separated by teams when they go on the road and start winning road games.
Yeah, and it's not foreign, obviously, we're Purdue in those situations on the road. We've seen it time and time again, especially the last couple of years with them dropping some road games. And that's just what it is when you're in conference play and in these conferences like the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC. You got to make sure that you're on point, right? Because we know these guys like a Penn State, some of these teams that aren't getting as much love and limelight like some of the top teams in the conference are going to play their best game. And so that's my confusion with coming into this ball game, if you're Purdue, and knowing that defensively, Penn State, that's one thing that they can try and control on their home court is getting after you. And you're just careless with the basketball. And if they have real aspirations, and I know they do, of winning the Big Ten title again, then you can't have your ball handlers, your primary ball handlers, committing that many turnovers. And again, it's more credit. And you said this, RC, and giving that to Penn State, like they deserve all the credit. I think Puff Johnson is a guy for sure, thanking the basketball guys that he's not at North Carolina anymore. We'll get into what's going on over there, but found himself over at Penn State and had 4 steals tonight. But just one of those guys that's been disruptive and that was disruptive on the defensive end. So when you have guys like that, long athletes that can really get after you and just turn those plays. And when we talked about those 24 turnovers for Purdue, Penn State scored 32 points off of those turnovers. So it's not only that they're turning you over, but it's the live ball turnovers and them in transition and getting out and getting those buckets, which makes the game a lot easier for them. So, Kenny, where do you see Purdue after this? Is really only one or two ways you can go, right? I mean, you're going to have a situation in practice like we discussed where Coach Painter, the coaching staff, will continue to remind guys like Braden Smith that, Ace Baldwin outplayed you, that we got our asses kicked, and it was basically a glorified scrimmage, and we need to bounce back. Or you can see this thing start to fester, especially when it comes to these road games and conference play. So what way do you see this thing going with them?
I think that I like RC said, I'm not taking this loss as anything more than what it is. They came out, they had a bad game on Penn State's home court. Penn State, they force a lot of teams to turn the ball over like that. I think that we need to see where they go. But I will say, I mean, they have a lot of talent. They've played in big games already this year. I don't think that they're, you want to talk about the panic meter, all that stuff. I wouldn't say the panic meter's high for them. I just need to see them come out. And I would not want to be the team that they play after this one, because like you said, Painter's going to have them. They're going to see every inch of that court for the next few days of practice here.
Yeah, that next matchup.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out a lot about them because they got Maryland, A&M, and Auburn.
Yep.
Like, we're going to find out about them just in the next week and a half, like early, to see if they respond from this loss. Like, we're gonna write this up as a one-off, but we're going to find out a lot. Now, 2 of those are at home, and I think in Mackey is one of the best college atmospheres in the country. I mean, having been there, it's unreal. I'm curious to see how they're going to be. The performances I want to see is when they're away from home. But either way, Maryland, we know, is talented. They're going to be good. That's going to be a tough out, home or away. A&M just junks up the game. And A&M is going to have the same similar type of defensive, intensity as they saw tonight. That they played against tonight. So they may not get the full court pressure, but in the half court, A&M is going to grind you. That's going to be a grind. It is going to be a grimy, deep water, ugly type game, right? And then, Auburn is I know they lost to Duke the other day, but I don't know if anybody's playing any better than Auburn in the country right now. And that's going to be a tough game, no matter where you play that. And so you're going to find out a lot about this group. They better get the turnovers out of their system, get ready to go, because these next 3 games, they need to respond.
Is there a situation with Braden Smith where you talked about preseason player of the year for the Big Ten, that there's too much on his shoulders and thinking that, I'm not trying to put him, well, I guess I am going to do this anyway, but just that he's not built for these situations to be the lead guy for Purdue to carry them over the top? Because I'm starting to see things in his game where he needs those other guys to be on point and be themselves to just help his overall impact.
I think you have, coming off last season, where you have the biggest guy in the biggest guy in college basketball. You have all of, man, that he was such a crutch for the team, right? He was getting to the free throw line. You were able to just throw the ball down to him in the post, and he was going to get the job done. So it's a gut check for these guys coming in, because there's going to be the question all year of, can they do it without him? And it's going to be interesting with their next 3 games. Maryland's going to be, they're a good team, but then those next 2 games, you got to be ready to go. Maryland, I'm not saying to overlook Maryland by any means, but you look at Auburn, you talk about defense, like that's going to be a tough game. So I think that's the biggest question. Can these guys do it without Edey?
Yeah.
And Cam, sure. I laughed when you said that, because I
peeped that, RC. I peeped that.
I laughed. No. And I laughed because I made that very comment, and then they beat Alabama, and then everybody went crazy, and they at me, and they talking all, take that, all that shit. And I'll say it again, like I'm not going to overreact the other way, and then like now talk trash to them. But what my point was, all I was saying is that teams, the difference is when you're losing Zach Edey. I thought Zach Edey was the defensive player of the year, not just the player of the year. I thought he had that type of impact on the team. And the difference is now you're scheming Braden Smith. You're scheming him now, and it's not just him. It's not like I'm taking anything. He's a heck of a player. The issue is, I think the other guys, a lot of those guys on the team need him. They need his creativity so they can be effective. So when teams are trying to scheme him, I think it hurts some of the other guys. Like, he can go get his, but the other guys, there's a lot of guys on that team need him creating for them to score. And I think that's something that they're going to have to make the adjustment to. And that's all I was saying before, and it's what I'm saying now. You're going to see teams go after him. And can he go out and get it? And I can just tell you, and it's something that guards got to deal with all the time throughout the country. When you can score, but they need other guys you got to create for other players. That's going to be Smith's biggest issue this year, is how does he balance the two? And that's an adjustment, because it is different, and it's going to be a lot on his plate. He has the game to do it, but adjusting to when teams decide they want to scheme you and take you out of it, they make it really, really hard for you. And there's no one else on that team making the game easier for him. Even when Kaufman Wren is playing, he's just playing one-on-one in the post. They're just throwing it in there and letting him go one-on-one. But I think Smith's the guy that has to create for himself and everyone else on that team. And when he's getting schemed and everybody, the teams that's going to do that, and it isn't always the best teams, it's going to be some of the middle of the Big Ten or some of the bottom tier teams, as quote unquote Penn State was supposed to be, from judging by preseason rankings. So we'll see.
Let's just call it what it is, RC. We're kind of Euro stepping around the name, but Fletcher Loyer has to be better, like 100%. Like, he has to be better with this basketball team. And knowing that teams are going to scheme against Braden Smith, obviously the video is going to be out, and the game film is going to be out more on Trey Kaufman-Wren to try and minimize his impact with Purdue. Good luck in trying that, because again, like, he's just going to get his no matter what. But at the same time, if I'm coming into this matchup, if I'm Texas A&M, or if I'm Maryland, if I'm Texas A&M, or if I'm Auburn, the blueprint is there. Look, heat these dudes up. Make sure that Braden Smith does not impact this game. You heat him up, because you're going to force other guys to step up, and they're uncomfortable at doing that, Kenny. And it's simple. We all know this as hoopers. It's like, all right, cool. We're not going to let this guy beat us. So we're going to force the other guys to step up and put them in uncomfortable positions. And we know that they're not built like that.
Yeah. Well, this whole time you're sitting here you're talking about this, I'm just happy that I'm not a guard, man. Because you guys got to deal with it for 90 feet, man. I had to go out and hedge on ball screens. I had to do that stuff. But like the worst they could do to me is double me. I could pass the ball. Like that, I get out of that easy. I'm just happy I'm not a guard. That's too much pressure for me.
Hey, RC was like, Kenny was probably like, yo, just take care of the basketball. Make sure you feed me in the post, dog. That's all I need you to do.
All I need you to do is get the ball up the court. That's all I need you to do.
All right, Kenny. Well, I mean, you threw it out there, man. And obviously with Xavier and a matchup against TCU and anybody that's calling it Xavier, Kenny Frease is going to pull up to your doorstep and take care of some things, man. But call it Xavier is wild, but it's Xavier. Everybody that needs to know that. But Xavier against TCU and that matchup, Kenny, I got to start this conversation with you, man, with this team. We had some conversations before we went on of this team heading into the season. We thought that they would be better, especially individual players, than what we've seen so far. So what's your take on this loss that Xavier took tonight against TCU?
I mean, I think, first of all, you have to point out the fact that they lose Traore before the season started. That he was going to be a huge piece of this team. I don't know how many minutes Hughley was getting if Traore is the starter, and I still think that Hughley has the ability to do the offense that they play is so fast. They're getting the ball up and down the floor as fast as they possibly can. That's going to be a tough situation for any guy that's 6'11", 270. It's going to be tough, but we're getting production out of Fremantle and Conwell. We knew that stuff was going to come. McKnight hasn't really been there the last couple games. He's been the guy over the past 2 years, no matter how bad or good Xavier was playing. I always felt like we're going to have that steady dose of McKnight. He's going to find his ways. He's going to be able to lead the team. And I haven't seen it from him lately, which is disheartening, but it's tough, man. Swain has been maybe one of our best players. He's doing it in a dirty way. He's like getting rebounds. He's getting out on fast breaks, playing defense. But, outside of those three guys, then you're looking at Maddox, who, when I found out he was coming to Xavier, I was so excited. I watched games. I watched game film. I watched some highlights. I think I read a stat somewhere that he made 19 threes outside of 30 feet last year. And it just doesn't feel like he's playing with confidence because he's not that go-to guy, the number one guy on the team. He's playing the sixth man. Xavier doesn't really have the ability to throw him and Maddox in for extended periods of time because of defense. So it's just been frustrating to watch because we know what we're going to get from Conwell. We know what we're going to get from Fremantle, and we need the other guys to step up and kind of fill in those puzzle pieces, get in where you fit in to win games. And right now they're not doing it.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the name Dante Maddox. I mean, we knew with Conwell, Randolph, and also Fremantle that they're going to bring and do what they do night in and night out. Just we talk about how guys are built. They're built like that. But Dante Maddox is a guy that I know and I've covered since his high school days when he was at Bloom High School in the Chicago area. He's an offensive power, but when he's not making shots, I don't know what else he's bringing to the court to help his team win. And that's the big question with Dante moving forward with this Xavier team, especially off the bench in his role. Again, once he gets himself going, I think that's going to be one of the keys for this team to really take that next step throughout the season, is when he finds that confidence again and he gets his shot going, but also realize that he can do other things on the court to help this team win other than just score the basketball. Then you're going to have this Xavier team unlock something else, RC. And so, I mean, do you see it that way with Maddox, but then also just big picture with Xavier moving forward after this loss against a TCU team that for sure took it right to them in this matchup in the Big 12 Big East battle?
First of all, it was a brutal loss to me because they had this game. I thought they were in control of this game, and within the last minute, and they had a horrible fouling Wenzel on the three, and the two possessions after that, you turned the ball over, and you did such a good job in the second half of taking care of the basketball. You had like 9 turnovers in the first half, and that's what TCU does. They get down to the most critical part of the game, and then they have these turnovers, and that just that hurts you when you're up. They take care of the basketball. If they just get shots up, I think they win those games. But you give up pick sixes back to back, and you cost yourself the game. They got to be kicking themselves in the ass on this one because they winning on the road is hard, and You played well enough for 38 and a half minutes, so 39 minutes, and then you kind of give it up that way. And credit to TCU because that's their style of play. We saw two pressure teams
Right.
tonight take care of business at home, right? But the Penn State game, which is total domination, Xavier played like Xavier in the sense that last minute, the minute 39 seconds, coughing the ball up, man. But two guys, man, I add to you guys. You were talking about players. Marcus Foster and John Hughley have played college basketball and played at a high level and had really big moments in their college career. And I'm waiting on them to be like, I know Traore's out and now Hughley's is in the lineup and he's playing, but I've seen him when he was at Pitt had moments where he was a force inside. He had a huge impact. So I don't know if it's because he's dropped so much weight. He's trying to play more on the perimeter, but he was one of the best in not just in the ACC. He was one of the best in the country at posting up, drawing fouls, being physical. So I don't know if he's lost so much weight he doesn't feel like he needs to play that way. He hit one shot tonight, as you mentioned, Kenny, and it was a 3. And so, but there's more there for him to contribute to this team, and I've seen Foster do more too. So, Sean's a hell of a coach, but those are the two guys I look at. If they can elevate their play to help Xavier out again, I think then Xavier can be a surprise team. Even in the Big East, even throughout the injuries, but. Traore's injury is it is devastating to him, but that's where Hughley's got to step up, and I thought he was going to be even better sliding into that role, and Foster's got to be he's got to step up and be more consistent. So for me, it's those two guys, and not just depending on him, but I've seen those two guys have success and play this game at a really high level, and I think they can get back to that.
When I found out Hughley was coming to Xavier, right, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, we got Fremantle, we got Swain coming back, Conwell, McKnight. You're 6'11", 6'10", whatever it is. How are they going to double you, right? You're going to get the ball in the post and you're going to be one-on-one on an island. And I'm expecting him to – I didn't think he was going to come out and average 20 a game. But I was figuring that he was going to come out and be able to back down to the basket. I mean, I'm seeing him finish through players in Oklahoma and Pitt and, getting up three-point shooting was always a little bit of a thing, but never, the only shot you make in a game. But, I mean, I would have dreamed of a day like that when I'm getting the ball in the post and I don't have to worry about anybody coming to me. I mean, it's just like you kind of get in this situation where he's weak with the ball sometimes, and it's frustrating to watch as a fan and as an ex-player that was in a position like him. I'm not saying that he's not a good player. That's not what this is about at all. But the beginning of this season has not been his best. And if Xavier wants to do something this year, they need production from John Hughley.
What he reminds me of? He reminds me of a guy, like so many of these guys. They get outside information about, hey, you got to show you can start shooting threes or expand your game. Nobody is paying John Hughley money to shoot threes. So if you want to get paid, get on the block, dominate there, because that's what you're good at, and then step out occasionally and knock some threes.
Right.
If you're sitting out there and you're just jacking threes or you're trying to be this perimeter guy, other than dribble handoffs or screening and rolling or whatever like that, somebody will pay you for that. I've seen him dominate a game posting up against high-quality bigs. I've seen him do that. So for whatever reason, it's just been a slow start to him. But if he wants to be a pro or make some money at this game, which I know he does, it's got to be inside out. It's got to be defensively. It's got to be rebound. It's got to be all those things. We talk about this. Hell, he had 1 rebound in 13 minutes.
Right.
And so say what we want. There's a lot of potential and talent there, but at the end of the day, Sean doesn't give a damn about none of that. Sean's about production, and you better be able to give some production.
Well, and you look back to 2 years ago when they go to the Sweet 16, they have Sule Boom, Colby Jones, Jack Nungy. Those are the 3 best players on the team, and nobody's doubting that. But the guy that we're talking about the most is Jerome Hunter, because he comes off the bench. He barely plays all year. He comes out. He's getting 10, 15 rebounds in games. They don't even come close to beating Kennesaw State in the first round if it's not for Jerome Hunter, right? So, he just needs to find his spot. We don't need it. They don't need him to go score 10 points or 15 points, but they do need him to get more than 1 rebound. They do need him to get more than 0 block shots and clog up the paint. They need that stuff from him because you're going to get the scoring from their 3 main scorers every single night. They just need him to do something. And right now he hasn't found his way in that offense.
Hey, at the end of the day, other guys got to step up when you talk about Xavier, as we did, and we just finished up, and also Purdue. So we'll keep our eyes on both of those teams, but also getting back to that Big East, Big 12 matchup. Big East up 4-3, but still, I believe, 5 games to go, somewhere around there within this Big East, Big 12 showdown as we move forward through the rest of the day. So we'll definitely keep an eye and see who, when the dust settles, who remains and will be victorious in that one. All right, we're going to take a break here on After Dark. When we come back, I teased it at the start of the show. We got to talk about what the hell happened on Wednesday. Maybe we should just call it What the Hell Wednesdays, and that's what it should be. We'll break down some of these ranked teams, especially the top 5, catching L's yesterday. Stay with us. We got more coming your way.
If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for the season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today.
Welcome back to After Dark. My man, Randolph Childress, Kenny Frease. I'm Cam Smith. And look, it is time for What the Hell Wednesday, because that's exactly what it was when you look at some of these teams in the top 5 that call L's, and all L's aren't the same. I mean, a loss is a loss, but some losses, it was just like a dog walking. So, guys, we're not going to go too deep into the X's and O's of it, but more just like a pulse and a heart check with some of these teams that caught losses. So, Kenny, I'll start with you, man. Which loss stood out to you the most yesterday when you look at some of these top 5 teams? And if not top 5, then some other teams that caught L's that were ranked.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, North Carolina, right? Like if you look at any one of their individual losses in their 4, none of them look bad on their own. But you go lose to Alabama by 15 points, and that doesn't seem bad. You lost in overtime to Michigan State, doesn't seem bad. Auburn's probably the best team in the country. You lose to them. But then I look at the Dayton game that they played in their tournament they were in. They were losing that game the entire time. They're very close to having 4 losses in a row here. Their guards were able to bring them back in the game from, I think, like 21 down. I was messing with Henson, actually. I put money on North Carolina like halfway through the game. They ended up coming back to win. But I mean, I think that string of games is the biggest surprise to me. And then this Alabama loss is just kind of icing on the cake.
What was that? What were the odds on that money line for you, Kenny, when you took Carolina when they were down, man?
Oh, it was like plus 320. It was like plus 320.
Okay,
man.
all right, cool. So when we connect in person, then, man, a round is on you, man, for sure.
All right, sounds good.
Hey, I don't know how do you argue against that. And to your point, they were up. They had a hell of a comeback to beat Dayton. I mean, they were down 21 in the second half, so they very well could have lost 4 games in a row. This team has forgot how to defend right now. They're not defending, and we know that they don't have rim protection. We know that they were going to miss Armando Bacot, but right now, collectively, they got to find a way. They got to continue. They got to get back to guarding. Carolina can score. Like, they're giving up over 80 points a game. They're giving up like 82 a game, and they play at a fast pace. So I expect other teams doing it. But they collectively, you don't have to have shot blocking, but you can come over and take charges. Like it would, the Alabama game looked like a layup line. And again, you were right there. You made a 3 to force overtime in the Michigan State game. It's just been a tale of 2 halves. They have been down by double figures in the first half, by 14 or more in the last 4 games, even going back to that Dayton game. And for whatever reason, I mean, obviously they don't know right away or why this is happening, or they would have fixed it. But they're coming out with slow starts. And and they're lucky. They're lucky they had that hell of a comeback against Dayton. Well, we're talking about 4 straight losses, and they got a game this weekend, Saturday at Georgia Tech. They get a chance to right the ship. And you don't know what to expect even with that game, because Georgia Tech got 2 starters that have been out of their lineup, and you don't know if those guys are coming back in Wasey Reeves and Xavier McCullum. So Carolina, the way that game was, it reminded me of like the Purdue game tonight. This final score, it wasn't indicative of how that game was. I don't think anybody from the time that game started thought Alabama was going to lose that game. And even when Carolina came back and made a little run. So you got to be concerned, I think, because you thought this team would be defending better. I thought they kind of started out, we thought they would. But when they played, as the talent increased, they hadn't been able to get stops. You know, and that's why this early this year, throw the analytical stuff and the numbers out. I mean, throw those numbers out. When you measure Carolina, we got to measure them off of the Maui Invitational and seeing, how they went from there. We got to, for Dayton, and we got to, we saw them against Kansas again. First half, looked like they were going to ran out of the gym, and then they come storming back in that game. So can Carolina put 2 halves together? Is yet to be seen. But the disturbing thing is they're not defending worth a damn. Like, that's just not something that they're doing right now. There's no secret to that. And ACC play kicks off this weekend, and they better get it together. They better start defending, or it's going to be a really long year for the Tar Heels.
Yeah, I mean, a couple opportunities back at home, as you mentioned, against Georgia Tech, but then also LaSalle before they face off against Florida on their neutral court with the Jumpman Invitational over there in Charlotte. So, I mean, yeah, neutral court, but it's still going to be held in Charlotte. So you would expect it to feel like a home game for North Carolina, especially if they can win back-to-back games after dropping 3 straight. Look, I'm going to be honest. I'm worried if North Carolina can beat a ranked team moving forward. Like, they I know it's early, RC, and I understand what you're saying about just throwing some of the stats out and the analytics stuff out early in the season. But to your point, if they can't defend, who are they going to beat? And I know the Michigan State game went into overtime, but if you're giving up 94 points to Michigan State, we know Michigan State at times, and really more times than not, is offensively challenged, right? I mean, they want to play a slow down, methodical game, make it physical, but those things can't happen if you're North Carolina. And so when I mentioned just the pulse and the heart, they have to figure out something. And I'm looking at guys like RJ Davis, who is come back for another season at North Carolina. He has to be better, because I would hope that guys are still looking at him as the leader and that he can lead them moving forward. But right now, it feels like they're in search of a leader, just because RJ's going through, he has his offensive slumps and his lulls where he's just shooting very poorly. I mean, the numbers are there with that. But they have to find something for themselves moving forward. And maybe they find it against Georgia Tech and LaSalle before they face off against another ranked team in Florida. But it's going to be a big concern, really, for Tar Heel fans and everybody out there. I know John Henson was speaking to this the other night on After Dark on Field 68 about just the back line of defense. That front court has been so non-existent at protecting the rim and defending the paint. And I know that it's not just all on them. Like, guards have to do a better job of controlling the ball. But still, when you realize that as a guard, and RC, you can speak better to this than me and Kenny, once you beat that first wave of defense and knowing that that opponent does not have any rim protection or paint presence defensively, you're like, oh, I'm about to show out tonight. Like, you look, I'm about to call all my family and tell them to make sure that they put on the ESPN Sports Center highlights, because I got off.
Cam, that's what I meant when I say throw the analytics out. Because if you take away the American and Hawaii game, I'm talking about they gave up 94 to Michigan State, 85 to Auburn, 90 to Dayton, and Kansas, and 92 to Kansas, right? So that's what I'm judging them off of. So when I say throw away the analytics, so if you start looking at the other teams, it looks better. Elon only scored 76, right? American scored 55. That makes it look better. I'm just judging them off of when I put the kind of caliber that they're going to play against in the ACC and the level that they're playing against. That's what I'm saying. Like, you're giving up almost 90 a game. Like, you got to guard somebody. So the effort's there individually with certain guys. I think Elliot Cadeau, he's gotten in foul trouble in a couple of games. They can't play without him. One other thing, and I say this about Carolina that concerning on the offensive end, and they scoring, right? I think it's still an adjustment for those 3 guards. Seth Trimble, who is probably their most consistent player, offensively. He's been the most consistent player, I think, all year for them. Both sides of the ball, I don't even think that's within question. But he's better with the ball in his hands. R.J. Davis was a full-time point guard. Then he's kind of went a mixture, and then now he's more off the ball. But I think everybody would acknowledge R.J. Davis is better with the ball in his hands. And then Elliot Cadeau is the point guard, and he can dominate a game with the ball in his hands of evolving. But then when you don't have bigs, you can't finish. You know, Washington and these guys are finishing inside. They're smoking these layups. They can't finish in traffic. Finding consistency doing that is putting so much pressure on those three guys trying to figure out a way. You know, the freshman, you know, Jackson has done, you know, he's done well. I mean, they've had some moments, man, for some other guys, but defensively right now, I mean, it's only gonna get worse. And those bigs got it, because Armando was the big thing we're talking about. The same reason I said about Braden Smith is saying the same thing about R.J. Davis. They're scheming him now. He doesn't have Armando back there. Like I'll say this, when Armando set a ball screen against Carolina, teams were so worried because he was so dominant rebounding that all you had to do as a guard was nobody was switching. You weren't switching the guard on Armando because you got no shot at he was grabbing every rebound. Now he's gone. They go from Carolina being one of the best rebounding teams in the country to now they're even rebounding. And that's not what Carolina has been. They're not getting any offensive rebounds. They're gang rebounding defensively, but it's really hurting them. And they're not getting enough stops to run as much as they usually can. They run after makes and everything else. But it's a big alarm, man. I don't know where this team goes because there's so many things that are going on around. But the biggest thing is you got to start guarding, take some freaking charges.
Right.
You got to do something because right now this is you got to be concerned.
Yeah. All right, we're going to see if we get that same concern for Kansas after the break because they went down against Creighton, the number one team going down, and we got to get Kenny's thoughts on that big man matchup or lack thereof because one guy showed up and another guy didn't show up at all. So we'll unpack that after the break. Stay with us. This is Field 68 After Dark.
Now that college basketball season is back in full swing, I need to remind you guys about our partners over at Autograph, where the real college hoops fans reside. The Autograph app curates all of the best content for every sports fan and every sports fan's favorite team. Podcasts, blogs, analysis. It's all there without the nonsense from the talking heads that don't actually watch the games. And there's a bonus. Consuming content on the Autograph app earns you coins that can be redeemed for rewards for things like no-fee tickets or signed jerseys from your favorite players. There are a couple new features in the app that I need to let you guys know about as well. Autograph Replay gives you a quick-hitting summary of the previous day's news so you can keep track of all the important things going on with your favorite teams. And Autograph Rooms allows you to chat in real time with the true voices of fandom within your team's community. So go to the link in the description or scan that QR code on your screen and download the Autograph app.
Oh, yeah. I'm rubbing my hands like Birdman because we got to get into this conversation about number one Kansas going down against Creighton. So it's in that Big 12, Big East matchup. As I mentioned, the Big East is leading that series so far 4-3. But guys, look, you come into this ball game expecting a battle of the Titans in terms of the bigs when you have Hunter Dickinson for Kansas, Ryan Kalkbrenner, and it didn't live up to it because, as I mentioned before break, one guy didn't show up. And let's just be real about it. It was Hunter Dickinson. I don't want to put it all on him, but one thing that I saw in that game, but then also looking at the shot differential between DeJuan Harris Jr. and Hunter Dickinson. Dickinson only had 4 shots. DeJuan Harris Jr. took 21. So that needs to be flipped around to make it a real matchup. But Kenny, when you look at those two bigs and coming into that, I know you anticipated seeing some type of action, but Ryan Kalkbrenner just dominated 17 and 10, had a block, and it was like Kansas didn't exist to him inside that lane.
Yeah, Kalkbrenner is one of those guys that I remember playing against that would be, they're kind of lanky. But the way that they move and the way that they hit you a lot harder than you feel like they're going to hit you. And when I watched Hunter Dickinson earlier in the year, it seems like he was like an enforcer. every game he played in, he was the one bringing the contact. He was the one hitting threes and, talking after running down the court. And then obviously in the post catching lobs and doing all that stuff. But you just didn't see that. You didn't see that swagger coming from him because Kalkbrenner, I mean, man, I've had to watch him a lot over the past couple of years covering, Xavier basketball in the Big East. And the dude can just play, man. It's something about him. He gets into the feel of a game, and it doesn't seem like any moment's too big for him. Obviously, he had 49 points earlier in the season, which is, I don't really care who you're playing against. You're going to get doubled. You're going to get tripled. It's like if you're really going off like that, to be able to do that. I mean, he's just a really talented guy. But yeah, I mean, this game, we didn't get to see the big time matchup, and it's kind of disappointing. But Creighton has that one thing that's the great equalizer. They can shoot threes, man. They can really shoot threes. They ended up making 10 threes or 12 threes in the game. Like, that's a lot of threes to make. I mean, it's nothing crazy, but still, like, that's the difference in the game. You're making 12, they're making 8. So, you talk about the big men and all that, but at the end of the day, the guards were able to come out too for Creighton. Hunter Dickinson only shot the ball 4 times. So it's like, I don't know. It was tough. Everybody was excited for that matchup, though. I know I was.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I'm still waiting on news to come out that he got the flu or something.
Right.
No, I'm serious. Because knowing him, he is a competitive ass dude. Like, he's a competitive ass kid. Knowing Hunter Dickinson, I know he wanted to take this matchup personal, right? Like, there's not many times player of the year caliber bigs you get this type of matchup, and
right.
it was, I mean, 4 shots. He just didn't seem like it. Like, I'm seriously, I'm not trying to be funny. It wouldn't shock me if they told me he had a fever or he's sick or something. Like, that's the only thing I can think of. I just don't. I don't see. I can't get out of my mind any other way to see how that game turned out. And it's not that I'm surprised that Creighton won. I mean, Creighton's a good team. Getting,
Right.
Kalkbrenner being healthy, being back. Pop Isaac was obviously, he was great. But that matchup, I thought, normally Hunter Dickinson takes those things. He's talking trash. He takes those competitive, and that just wasn't the case. So, like I said, it wouldn't shock me if they told me he had a fever, didn't practice all week or something like that. That's all I can think of.
Look, if that comes out about Dickinson, then I hope the same comes out about KJ Adams Jr. as well, because it's like, all right, man, there's a bug sweeping through their front court because he was non-existent as well, man. We got to say what it is.
Like, whatever it was, the whole front line got it. They might have got Kalkbrenner disease. They got Kalkbrenner. They might have got something. They got the flu.
I know in the NBA.
Man. Sometimes you come across dudes, you be like, hey, man, I'm sick, coach. I don't want to play. That stuff happens at the NBA level all the time. So
I was gonna say we've heard the Derrick Rose flu come out with certain guys in D Rose in his prime with the Bulls and doing his thing. Yeah, they wasn't trying to see that at all. But Kenny, you talked about Creighton shooting threes. That's funny as hell, RC. Like, I'm gonna be laughing about that, waking up out of my sleep thinking about that, the Kalkbrenner flu. But Kenny, you talked about the threes that Creighton knocked down. I'm just thinking about my time at Southern Illinois at the time when Creighton was in the Missouri Valley and playing in that arena. That arena is different, man. I mean, when that crowd gets involved and that team is knocking down threes and they're just really feeling invincible, it's a tough challenge to overcome or obstacle to overcome. And we saw that last night with Kansas and Creighton. Like, Pop Isaacs was special in knocking down shots. Not even just knocking them down, but knocking them down in a timely fashion for Creighton. But once that crowd gets into it and this team is really feeling themselves, you just feel like you can't do anything against them defensively to slow them down. But again, if you don't have anything in terms of your star stepping up and doing something like Hunter Dickinson, then you might as well pack it up. But 63 points for Kansas, that's damn near unheard of, Kenny. Come on.
Yeah. Man, I don't even know what to say about it, because I think you might be onto something, RC, because I can't say that personally I ever felt that way against anybody I ever played against, but it's to score 63 points. I think, honestly, in college basketball, you cannot discount what you said about the arena. I mean, you have guys coming in there, and it's a tough place to play. Now, having said that, they also already played against Duke. They played in that big game. They played against North Carolina. Like, you would think that they're going to come out and be ready for that type of situation. But, we've been seeing it all year. Team comes out, gets punched in the mouth, and, you got a guy like Kalkbrenner, you got Pop Isaac going 6 for 9 from 3. It's going to be tough to beat him, especially if your, star big guy doesn't really show up. It's going to be a really hard night for you.
Yeah, no doubt about that, man. Let's go to the other game that happened Wednesday night. And this is one of those when I said that, all losses aren't the same, but it's still at the end of the day, a loss is a loss. Auburn and Duke, obviously going down at Cameron Indoor, man. And it felt like at times, especially early on with Auburn, they were in full control of that game. I mean, so many just mini stories within that ball game stepped up. Obviously, the biggest one is Isaiah Evans. And I love that Jeff just went right at John Shire after the game and said, what the hell took you so long to play Isaiah Evans? But, and John Shire said it perfectly. And this is typical of a college coach, especially a young kid that's in a situation where maybe he feels like he's not playing as much, but still puts the work in. And that moment comes from where he steps up. And that was the case for Isaiah Evans. But that was a hell of a ball game that we saw yesterday between Duke and Auburn. And to your point, RC, what we're going to see with Auburn moving forward and just how difficult they are on the defensive end to try and crack that code. And a team like Purdue that's going to face them in a few weeks. Look, Bruce Pearl, in my opinion, right now, with all the just craziness that we've seen, but with a season of parity, this is the team that I think moving forward, that if I had to put some money down to win the Natty, it would have to be Auburn, just from what I've seen so far at this point in the season.
Wouldn't get an argument from me. I mean, they're damn good, and it took Isaiah Evans going crazy in the first half to keep Duke in it. I mean, the kid comes off the bench; he hasn't played, and for whatever reason, and he gets in and he knocks down 6 threes. Who would have thought it? Like, I know he's done those things in practice. I don't know why he's not consistently playing. Maybe he's not defending in practice or something he hadn't shown Shire. But he's shown him he's capable of playing, and hopefully he gets to consistently build off this man and get some minutes going. But Duke is – listen, I think Duke, 10 players, and I would throw Darren Harris into that, is as talented as anyone. The only concern that I have with Duke is point guard play. And I've said that from the summer, and I'm going to say that throughout the season until because that's one thing I don't think people are talking about. Foster didn't start this last game. So obviously they were looking – they weren't pleased there. And so, they went back to Proctor. And they didn't start Proctor they started Proctor off the ball. Now he's back on the ball. So there's some concern there. They're kind of doing it by committee. I've expressed how I feel about that, about Duke. I know we're not going deep. We're not deep, diving deep into Duke now, but credit to them for getting it done. It was a hell of a game. I think one of the probably more competitive games over the weekend, because most of the games I thought were just blowouts, and that was a pretty damn good game. Credit to Duke for coming back. They got punched in the mouth early. They got off the mat. They fought back, and they won the game.
Really good. A really good way. Yeah. A really good way to come back from getting punched in the mouth early is to only give up only have 4 turnovers in the game and get 13 points off the other team's turnovers. Auburn only had 8 turnovers in the game, and they were able to convert those to 13 points. Like, that's a huge deal in a game where you're playing against 2 very talented teams. I mean, I don't know if I've had more fun, and I'm not trying to do anything crazy here, but I've not had more fun watching college basketball than watching Cooper Flag in a long time. My son loves that dude. Somebody call him Hooper Flag, and now my son walks around the house calling himself Hooper. Like I have a lot of fun watching him play. It's funny. It's funny. But anytime there's a Duke game on, my son wants to watch him play. I'm like, no, we're Xavier fans, man. You don't need to watch them.
He's like, don't get influenced. Don't get influenced.
He got blue in the house. Blue.
Yeah,
he got
right.
Duke blue.
Yeah.
But honestly,
Kenny's like, no,
you're good.
No, I was gonna say, like, Kenny's probably telling his son, like, no, we need a darker shade of blue. We're not rocking that shade of blue, my man. But no, to your point, that Kenny, it just feels like with Cooper, and everybody looks at some of the dunks and the offensive stuff, but it's and we've talked about this before on different shows when it comes to Cooper. It's more than that. Like, defensively, it's the intangible stuff that he does, and being in the passing lane and getting those steals and getting out and getting blocks, right? I mean, that's the underrated part to me for the outside people that just look at the surface level of his game, which is like the offense and the dunks and stuff. But he does a lot of intangible things and defensive stuff that really masks a lot of inefficiencies with this team defensively that helps out on the backside of defenses. So for sure, he's definitely Hooper Flag, and now that's going to be stuck in my head. And I'm sure my son's going to start calling him Hooper Flag because he's watching Duke as well. So Kenny, you done started something in the Smith household with that. But when you look at the SEC versus ACC challenge, SEC won it 14-2. And going back off of my Auburn point, if I had to put some money down, this is the team that I will put money on to win a national championship. But do you guys feel that this by far, and maybe not by far, but do you guys feel that this is the best conference in college basketball? Randolph, when you look at it from across the board with what they are, who they are, I know some teams took some tough L's that were ranked, but then also just the strength of this conference compared to others. Is it number one?
I think it's hard to argue it, right? I think it's hard to argue from the numbers, from the eye test. It's hard to argue the first month of the season that the SEC isn't the top conference right now. It's just hard to argue. Coming into Tuesday night, I think the top 25, or this week, 8 teams in the top 25 are in the SEC, with I think Arkansas and Texas getting votes. And it wouldn't shock me next week rankings come out that they got probably 9 or 10 teams in. So they're on a historic pace right now. When and I'm not, I'm an analytical guy, but I'm not a big analytical guy in that sense. But if you were to take some of their numbers, they're on like this historic pace of something we hadn't seen. I think all that stuff kind of levels out. I do think sometimes coaches or people, they look at November and like, hey, it's just a time to start, the season gets going. But these games matter. They do matter. And they're important. And it's hard to argue what the SEC is doing. Like, I don't care who you are. I'm an ACC guy. But 14-2, I mean, I can't argue that. And, and I've seen a bunch of games, and I've had a couple of teams from the SEC as well. I've been impressed with the SEC. It's legit.
Kenny, are you on that same wave? Is it the SEC for you?
Absolutely, it's the SEC. I don't think that there's any question about it. And I'm telling you right now, this SEC conference season might be one of the most fun conference seasons to watch ever. I mean, I don't think there's really a team that's going to come out of this feeling like, they did great or they had a great winning record other than maybe Auburn. But, I mean, they're going to eat themselves alive. This conference is so good, and I'm really excited for it. I don't ever before really getting together with you guys on Field of 68, like I was watching mainly Big East basketball, and that was it. I've been getting into this SEC world this year, and man, it's some fun basketball to watch.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, we're going to take our final break here on After Dark on the Field of 68. But when we return, we got to give that toast of the night before we wrap up this Thursday edition. So make sure you stay with us.
Now that the college basketball season is in full swing, you need to make sure that you have access to the best betting tool on the market, the Rhythm app. Spelled RITHMM, is a data-backed app that uses AI and analytics to identify inefficiencies in betting lines and the player prop market that will allow you, the user, to profit. You can create customized, analytics-driven betting models tailored to your personal preferences as a bettor. Users have access to up-to-the-second against-the-spread data. And if you're like me and you understand pictures better than numbers on a screen, Rhythm's internal trend analysis provides you with the kind of graphs that will allow you to evaluate past results and project future performance in a visual way. Every Division I college basketball team is included in the Rhythm's metrics. Free subscribers to the Field of 68 Daily will get 25% off for a Rhythm subscription. Use the QR code on the screen to sign up or download at the link in the.
Welcome back to After Dark. Cam Smith with Kenny Frease and Randolph Childress. And before we get to the toast of the night, we got to do a quick panic meter with some teams and also conferences, especially coming after this week and what we saw, just the wildness that happened in college basketball. We had that one segment where I just self-titled it the What the Hell Wednesday, and that's exactly what it was. But I want to get you guys thoughts on the panic meter when it comes to certain teams. We went in depth on North Carolina, so I think the panic meter, at least for me, is high on them.
and what they have coming up with their schedule. So let's just open up that conversation, not with just North Carolina, but then also we said this before we went to break with the SEC, just dog walking the ACC in that matchup 14-2. So what's the panic meter for you? RC, I got to start with you as an ACC guy when it comes to the Atlantic Coast Conference.
I don't worry because I'll say this, as confident as I said the SEC is the best team right now, I'm confident the ACC will respond. Like let's not get it twisted. When it's mattered at the end, they're there. Now, has the first month of the season gone the way they like? No. I don't think anybody could do that. They couldn't even argue that in their own building. But I do believe this league will respond. What that looks like, I don't know. I can't predict now how many teams will get in, but I know this league will respond as it always does. Will it get 2 or 3 teams in the Elite Eight or Final Four? Any of that, I don't know. But it won't be 14-2. This lopsided. Like no, the league. There's no way. Too many good coaches, too many good players. The league will respond.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm still giving them a little grace there, so I'm not going to go crazy on the panic meter with North Carolina, with some of these teams that we saw. Even, I know Pittsburgh fans are like, man, I'm glad they didn't talk about us and us getting smacked and giving up 90-plus points, almost getting beat by 40. But, Kenny, what are your thoughts on the panic meter when it comes to the ACC? Is it high? Is it low? What do you got?
I think it's tough right now to say. You have one team, Clemson, that has a winning record against top 50 teams in the country right now. It's early in the season. I think that they're, the law of averages, these teams are going to start to find their way. They're going to find their path to have winning seasons, good seasons. And, but if I'm, an ACC fan right now, I'm pretty nervous about it, but it's a long season. We're only 9 games in, like, there's a lot more basketball to play. They're going to be going against each other, finding out who's going to be the cream to rise at the top. I think Duke has a pretty good advantage right there right now. They don't have the best record, but they've definitely played the best schedule. So I don't think that the panic meter is too high, but it is concerning that you only have one team that's got a winning record against top 50 opponents.
All right, let's move forward and talk about Arizona when it comes to that panic meter that's going on with them, because with everything that they have in Tucson, you expect better, right? So where's that panic meter for you, RC, when it comes to this Wildcats team that has underachieved? Like they haven't been what people expected coming into this season, especially thinking about a guy in particular in Caleb Love. I think we can't hear you, RC. All right, we'll come back to you, RC. How about you, Kenny?
Well, in the beginning of the season, you see these guys score 93 points against Canisius. You score 102 points against Old Dominion. And I remember watching that Old Dominion game. I played college basketball. I played some of these bye games. I know what it's like to play against those teams. It's not easy. Even if you go out and win by 20, 25, whatever, they won by 60 points. So I think coming from that offensively, you were expecting them to really have that offensive firepower against anybody that they played. They're not going to beat every team by 60, obviously, but then you give up 103 points to Wisconsin. And that, to me, that's a problem. It's just so up and down. Then you score 55 points against Duke. You hold them to 69, but you only score 55 points. Right. I think for me right now, coming into the bulk of their schedule here, like they're going to have to get it together if they want to have any. They've had some. Had some bad losses. Yeah.
Yeah, we got you, RC.
Yeah, Caleb Love's got to lead this team. Let's just call it what it is. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of his. He knows that. I've told him that to his face. This is an All-American. This is on you to fix this. Like you've been to a national championship game. Like you have this experience. You're a 5th-year guard. You have the talent. You have the ability. Take control of this locker room. Lead this freaking team and get this team back to where everybody expects them to be. I don't know what's going on there in Arizona, but right. I know it needs to be Caleb Love fixing it. That's all. That's the best way I can say, because I think that much of him. Even when he, I defended him when he left Carolina and everybody was kind of dumping the season of Carolina, it was kind of everybody was piling it on him, and he responded from that. This isn't anything. He showed you his character, responding from that. But he's the guy I'm looking for to fix Arizona. That's just the only thing I can say about it.
All right, so panic meter for you guys, 1 through 10, 10 being the highest. Obviously, RC, what do you got with Arizona?
I'm about a 7, 8.
That's valid. I'll put weight to that for sure. What about you, Kenny?
I have a hard time this early in the season going anywhere up above 6, 7, because that's where I would probably put North Carolina too. There's just so much more basketball to play, man. Like, these guys are going to find it. Caleb Love, I mean, he's going to find his way. He's going to get. I mean, I remember my time at Xavier, my senior year, we went like 2-1 or 1-2 in the Hawaii tournament. And the only team we beat was Hawaii, and that was right after the UC fight. There's all that stuff going on, and our team did not look good. And, we came together and we pulled that season out. We ended up going to the Sweet 16. We lost to Baylor. But at the beginning of that season, I'm sure there was a lot of people around the country saying, like, they made the Sweet 16 last year, but are they going to do it again? And so I just don't put so much weight in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, if you're going like 9 and even going crazy or 10, and one, you be an extra, and also you're a hater. Like, you gotta relax on that. So I think we're all in agreement when it comes to Carolina. It comes to Arizona. That panic meter, with 10 being the highest, 1 through 10, is at a 7 right now. Now, trust me, it can escalate upwards towards a 9 to 10 if it goes to the deeper season.
The question that I would say is, though, and I think the concern with some of that, the panic level is like, what are you panicking about, right? Are you expecting them to? What's the ceiling?
Yeah.
Are we saying, because I think every program got different level of expectations, right? Are we talking about a team like when the thing about Carolina is Carolina, so it's always national championship or else. And so I think the expectation when you say panic, you got to put some context to it. On the overall season, no, but national championship or something like that, I think so. So again, I think that's where you can add some context to that. But right now, like we said, we use that team. I think it's concerning because they're missing a guy, and they haven't shown this year that they've been able to replace, Armando. So I think that's why it's concerning with them. But they got time to turn things around, but it's going to take a collective effort. There isn't one or two guys to fix that.
Yep, 100% on that. All right, guys, it's that time to get into our toast of the night before we wrap things up on this Thursday edition of After Dark on the Field of 68. So, Kenny, start us off, my man. Who gets the toast of the night for you?
So my toast of the night is going to Penn State. They get their second win in 20 years over Purdue. They came out, they controlled the whole game, punched them in the mouth from the beginning. It was never really close. I like stories like that where teams come, unless it's anybody beating Xavier. I like stories like that, people coming out and, getting a win over a team that they historically lose to. So that my toast tonight is to Penn State.
All right, man. Shout out to Penn State handling business and dog walking.
Hey, Kenny, I'm going to call you a homer, man, because you letting Xavier off the hook real easy tonight.
I don't think so. I called out.
I'm gonna call you out on your BS tonight. You've been real soft on the Musketeers, man. I'm telling you.
Listen, man. I've been public about it. There are guys that I know that I've been saying need to step up, and that's 100%
all right,
true.
You let them off the hook. I was giving you some time. I thought you was gonna really light into them because they blew this one tonight. They gave that one back.
Yeah.
They gave that one back. For me, I'm going to flip it a little bit, man. I saw a little bit of that Texas and Notre Dame women's game, man, and Hannah Hidalgo had 30 tonight. I don't know if y'all watched it. She's a bucket. Like, Shorty can go, and she's fun to watch. So if you hadn't seen it, you need to watch Hannah Hidalgo for Notre Dame. Fighting Irish.
Yeah, no doubt a bucket and getting after everybody. So shout out to Hannah Hidalgo, Notre Dame. Yale Ivy doing a thing over there as head coach for Notre Dame. Yes. But RC, I got you. I'm not letting Kenny off the hook. My toast of the night goes to the TCU Horned Frogs for handling business against Xavier. Kenny, it's all love, man. It's all good, but we got to give a shout out to TCU.
TCU didn't win that game. Xavier lost it.
So toast of the night for myself, TCU with that 76-72 win. And I know like Kenny's gonna block me on social media now. And if I'm on the schedule with him for the next Field of 68 after dark, he's gonna call Jeff and Robert like, I'm not doing another show with Cam Smith.
I got that Kalkbrenner, man.
Yo, that would do it for this Thursday night edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. For my guys, Randolph Childress and Kenny Frease, I'm Cam Smith. We appreciate everybody for tapping in with us. Take care. We'll see you.